Rachel and John, thank you so much for talking to us today. We're sitting here, it's October 7th. It has been a year of mourning for the country, and for you personally, a year of struggle and also mourning for Hersh in the past 5 weeks. Can I ask you firstly, how are you bearing up? How are you?
I would say we're terrible. This time of year, Shana Tova is like the standard go-to greeting that everybody's struggling with this year. Mine has become Shana Shel Nechama. It should be a year of comfort to people. It's what I wish for us. It's what I wish for the country.
Okay, sweet boy, go now on your journey. I hope it's as good as the trips you dreamed about, because finally, my sweet boy, finally, you're free. I will love you and I will miss you every single day for the rest of my life.
You said, Rachel, at the funeral, you asked, how do we do the rest of our lives without you? Is that becoming a little more clear to you?
It's really not. I think in order to function for the 11 months before Hersh and the other 5 beautiful hostages who were found with him were discovered, we had this mission. And it required suppression of so much terror and trauma that I, at least, feel like I packed all of that into many suitcases and shoved all of these emotions and feelings into these bags. And those are just waiting to be opened and unpacked. And I'm also very afraid to figure out what does forward look like without Hersh in it. And so I am very much trapped in the extreme present. How do I get through the day? And if I don't think I can do that, so how do I get through the next hour? And if that seems too overwhelming, so the next 15-minute increment. Sometimes it's the next minute. So it's very confusing trying to digest this complete unknown of a future without Hersh.
לפני מספר שעות התקנו את המשפחות כי גופות יקיריהן הותרו על ידי כוח צה"ל. הם נרצחו באכזריות על ידי מחבלי חמאס זמן קצר לפני שהגענו אליהם.
The trauma is sharpened by the fact that we really did have hope. And I think people around us, the world who got to know Hersh and the others, had hope that they're coming home. It's just a question of when and how. And so, like, the stark contrast to having that hope for so long, to have it just suddenly come crashing as it ended, that's one whole emotional piece.
It is, of course, striking the fact that you're still counting the days. The funeral was on day 332. You're still with these numbers because, as you say, the struggle continues. And I wonder, as far as you feel you can, to talk about the conditions in which they were held, all 6 of them, so that perhaps that would illustrate the urgency.
They were found in this airless, completely pitch black tunnel with no plumbing. They were all emaciated and bullet-ridden. Hersh was almost 6 feet tall. He was 1.80 meters, and he was 53 kilo when we buried him. He had all sorts of wounds all over his body from the 11 months that he had been held captive. He obviously had his dominant arm missing, which people knew about. He had a bullet through his right hand. His left hand was gone. We think that was a self-defense kind of wound that he had held up. It went through his right hand. He has a bullet wound that was in his shoulder, his neck, coming out of the top of his head, and then was shot again at point-blank range with gunpowder on the back of his neck. shot through his head a second time. Hersh was found on his knees, like he had collapsed and was on his knees with Eden, beautiful 24-year-old Eden Yerushalmi's head was on his lap or side. It was a horrifying scene. All of them were so thin. All of them were shot multiple times at close range. There were bottles of urine, very dark urine, found throughout the tunnel, showing how dehydrated all of them were. There was a plastic bucket that they had put it sort of at the end of the tunnel for some sort of privacy. Just a nightmare. You know, we're still finding out more and more details about, I always call them the beautiful six, because I really think of them as the beautiful six, and I'm not talking about how they looked, although on the outside they are beautiful, vibrant looking people. But each of them, as we've gotten to know the families better and gotten to know more of the qualities that those six people had.
We had lots of meetings in the 330 days that we were actively in the struggle. And we challenged decision makers and we said, you're lacking urgency. We need to bring these people home today. Why are you confident that we have time and that this isn't going to lead to a situation where lachatz tzva'i, too much military pressure, at the end of the day, leads to captors lining up hostages and shooting them one by one in the head? And we were told by people all over the place, no, it's not going to end like that. It's not going to end like that.
This is a scenario you actually
These are
spoke of.
conversations
You were afraid
that
of this
we actually had,
specifically.
and we asked that very question, why won't it end this way? We were immediately told each time, no, it's not going to end like that. They're an asset, there are reasons why, it's not going to end that way.
We felt, and the hostage families really felt, that people were not feeling that urgency because there was this idea of, they're coming home. It might be a while, but they're coming home. And that was so dangerous. And we kept pointing that out to people. And maybe part of our hope was too infectious, too positive during a dark time, that it even made the people who were at the table and the people with power to believe, everyone's coming home. Everybody just calm down. They're coming home. It's going to take some time. Now that we know how they were found, it is so vastly obvious that there is not 1 second to waste. We need to move now. There are people today, as we're sitting here talking, who are in those same conditions, and it's probably gotten worse.
We missed the urgency for the six, the beautiful six. Hopefully we can get people to find that urgency somehow, some way. I fear it's going in the opposite direction, but somehow, some way, so that we could bring home the 101.
You wrote in a piece with all of the families in Time magazine, you said that Hamas murdered our loved ones, but many other failed to save them. Israeli government told decision makers had opportunities to reach negotiated settlements to release our loved ones, and for calculations they deemed strategic, they chose not to.
There were points along the way where clearly there were discussions happening. I believe strongly that there were opportunities to do deals to release hostages. The rationale for not doing it changed every time, whether that be something about the Netzarim corridor or Philadelphia or how to move Gazan citizens back from the south to the north or the length of a pause. The defense minister in Israel, the head of the military in Israel, the head of the Shin Bet, the head of the Mossad, the lead negotiator, were all publicly saying in July, we should seize this opportunity. There was pressure, political pressure, a letter signed by significant influential rabbis, who I think never even understood the content of a deal that could be done, and in principle were rejecting a deal. And there were political decision makers who, for whatever reasons, did not seize that opportunity, and we missed it. It really does feel like something went awry in the decision making here. I think a lot about prior generations of Israeli decision makers. I think of a Menachem Begin, I think of Ovadia Yosef, and how his daughter and two of his sons have been on record recently saying, had our father been alive during this, these hostages would be home.
אני רוצה להביא את ההחלטה על הישארות כוחות צה"ל בציר פילדלפי לאישור הקבינט. שר הביטחון פונה לנתניהו. מה זה קשור עכשיו? המשמעות היא שאם חמאס לא מסכים לזה, אז אין הסכם ואין חטופים. נתניהו, כן, זו ההחלטה.
We chose to change the ethos and the ideology and the philosophy that the country has always prided itself on. And now you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. You know, there's certain things that once they're out, you really can't go back. I found it very interesting that people of power tried to come to us during Shiva. We actually said, please, we don't want those people here. In a kind way, not in a, there was no fighting, there was no brouhaha. When you make a choice to do something that you know is wrong, you can't, at least according to Jewish law, I mean, even Deoraita in Vayikra, it talks about when you do a sin intentionally, you bear the punishment for that sin. Don't come and ask me to forgive you for that sin. I'm not the right address. Real tshuva is when you find yourself in the exact same situation where you did the thing that you know was wrong and you choose differently. And what I would challenge those people who wanted to come to us after they chose not to save the 6, you have 101 chances now. Do it. And that's the tshuva. You don't have to come to me and ask for forgiveness.
Stay strong. Survive.
I think hostage families often are being gaslit and made to feel that they're speaking in a cliched, hysterical way because their person is there. You know, we have tried very hard talking in a world where the only way that people communicate is screaming. And we found that it was useful not to be screaming. But at a certain point, when you're in so much pain, I do wonder, when are we allowed to raise our voice? And so I would like to ask permission now that my person is not there. Am I now allowed to be considered? Is my voice more valuable now that I don't have a child in that situation anymore? What I would say now to the world is the hostage families have given you 367 days. You have not succeeded. Something's off. Maybe it's time to mix up the dynamic of who is doing this. So there's room for people to be really focused on the North and on Iran and on things that are happening in the Shtachim, 100%. And the Houthis, there's room for all of that. But there's also room for a few people to be constantly keeping their finger on the most life and death issue that we have control of, which is the hostage issue.
But it feels to me like we're caught up in so much other legitimate stuff that we have taken our foot off of the gas to the extent that it was on the gas on the hostage issue.
You are you know, both very kind, and you're not naming names, and I understand. But I would want to ask you if, after it was clear that Hersh is gone, you got a phone call from the Prime Minister.
We did get notified by his office that he wanted to speak, and we elected at the time not to. I don't really know what we would say to political decision makers, to certain rabbis, to other people in positions of leadership who we think failed us.
Let me ask you about the fact that he has become this figure that so many people around the world, as you say, did not know you, did not know him, and feel so connected to him. How do you explain that?
In the very beginning, Anderson Cooper had found the footage of Hersh. That footage of Hersh being kidnapped became footage that was just distributed worldwide, and he became someone who people knew. And I think that when things are really huge and hard to swallow, having it in a bite-sized piece of someone who could have been your son, your brother, your cousin, your babysitter, your boy next door. And he did feel like that for so many people. He very much is just a regular boy. I call him a boy because he'll always be my boy.
My name is Hersh Goldberg-Polin. Mama, Dada, Libi, and Orlin. I love you, I miss you, and I'm thinking about you every single day.
There were thousands of people at the Shiva. Did that surprise you, and did you discover a Hersh you didn't know of, or did it just sort of, you know, enhance what you already knew?
It 1,000,000% surprised us. Richard and Rotem, who are dear friends and part of our team from the very beginning, had said, we're gonna need to set up a tent. And I said, why? Let's just move the couch out of the living room. And they said, no, you have no idea what's about to happen. It was really tragic experiencing that Shiva in that way, because thousands of people did come. We called it a Shiva, but it really was not a Shiva. It was something else where we realized, I guess we need to comfort these people. And it was surreal.
And you think that comes from where? What did they feel?
Well, we thought that it came from that the nation is in a really bad place.
The country is traumatized. When those 6 deaths were announced of vibrant young people who I think all of us believed, they're coming home, they're coming home. It was just such a complete fall that people need repair. And one way they're doing it is to reach out to each other, reach out to us, reach out to the other 5 families. And I think that nationally, collectively, maybe we're hoping that it can be catapulted into something good.
Those 6, those beautiful 6, Alex and Ori and Almog and Eden and Carmel and Hersh kept each other alive for months and months and months in conditions that are just unimaginable. They did every single thing right. And we, all of us, failed them. And people were completely broken. It's all of us. It's all 6 families just getting this complete outpouring of fractured, fragmented pain.
We talk about, like, do we go back to our former selves? Do we slip back into the jobs that we were in on October 5th last year? Or should we be doing something else? And I think that one of the things that we've seen clearly is Israelis and even the world are hungry for something. And I'm not saying it's John and Rachel, but, you know, we have people who come to us and say, like, we need voices of clarity, of sanity. And we say to ourselves, like, well, we're just bereaved parents. Like, I'm not sure that we're those voices. But we do talk a lot about what do we do from here? And we don't know yet.
I've always liked being an anonymous person, and being named Rachel Goldberg was always helpful, and looking like this was always helpful, because I look like every Rachel Goldberg you've ever met, and I'm the Jane Doe of Jewish women. And now people see me, and this is a horrible thing. They start to cry. They burst into tears. It's very difficult being the trigger for someone to be in emotional pain. And I know we're all everyone's coming from a good place. No one would ever, ever do anything to intentionally cause us pain. But it's painful.
You both spoke to our correspondent Michal Pilan on day 72 of this. You talked about the government has to say bravely, if they don't want to bring them back, then say it. And I wonder if you think that they have been honest throughout this process.
I'm not even sure that they're able to be honest with themselves. I've learned so much in this crash course over this last year about the game of politics, and I do think it's a game. And we were pawns in this game, and the hostages are pawns, and Hersh was a pawn. And as anyone who plays chess will tell you, pawns are expendable.
You were asking if people have been honest with us, and I will admit that I'm having trust issues with anybody of any authority anywhere in the world lately, but I think that Magia Lanu, I think we deserve to have that skepticism.
When people would tell us, it's like he's our son, I always thought, please don't say that, because I know that if it was your son, you would be behaving differently. I had him for 23 years and 3 days. Then he went to the Nova, and he was stolen from me and from John and from his life and from himself for 328 days.
You're right here. I know you're right here. I just have to teach myself how to feel you in a different way. And Hersh, there's one last thing I need you to do for us. Now I need you to help us stay strong. And I need you to help us survive.
I want to believe now he is okay. And the question is, how do we become okay? We are going to heal. You can heal and go through life with feeling blessed that you had that person when you did have them. And we do feel that. There are people who walked out of Auschwitz and went on to have a good life. They never forgot their parents and their siblings and their spouses and their children who they lost there. But they went out and they decided, and it took tremendous effort, and they had good lives. And there are people who walked out of Auschwitz and never left Auschwitz.
We're in mourning, we're suffering, but we are making a choice personally that we are going to live life. We need to do it for ourselves, we need to do it for our daughters, and we need to do it because Hersh would want us to. So we will live life.